Support for Donnybrook is provided in part by Design Air Heating and Cooling.
Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it. Unacceptable by any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
We welcome you to another Donnybrook, this one on Valentine's Day Eve. We'll see how much love is in the room tonight. Let's start by meeting the panelists. She's Wendy Wiese, the media veteran. Bill McClellan from STLtoday.com and the Post-Dispatch. From the 314 podcast and St. Louis Magazine, Sarah Fenske. And we welcome Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American, whose mom celebrates a birthday tomorrow.
Happy Valentine's birthday to my mom, which is tomorrow, Valentine's Day. Mom's 89, going strong. Happy birthday. Love you so much. And I should have wore red. What's wrong with me?
You'll be hearing from her on her birthday. Okay. Hey, Bill, I want to ask you a little something about Melissa Price Smith. Since this is Valentine's Day tomorrow, there's some love in the air, I guess, or at least a very intimate, close relationship between the county prosecutor and the chief of staff. They're dating, okay? That'd be Melissa Price Smith and the chief of staff in the St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office. His name is Ron Cluse. Do you have any problems when the boss is dating an underling?
Well, you know, office romances are always problematic because things can go wrong in the romance and people wonder about it. But I suspect these two are going to be fine. And he is not directly reporting to her. He reports to Doug Seidel, who's a senior prosecutor over there, and an honorable man and a tennis partner of mine. And he's been the glue that's kept that place together for a while, I think. He worked for McCullough. He was a team leader, and then he was a team leader under Wesley Bell. So I got a lot of faith that these people are going to be okay.
Have you not taken any of these corporate training videos for office workplace etiquette? I mean, let's say he turns out not to be an employee that the prosecuting attorney wants. How is Doug Seidel gonna, I mean, how do you fire a boyfriend? And let's say Doug Seidel doesn't get along with him. How's he gonna fire him?
I mean, Charlie, you're right. It's like incredibly awkward, right? Like it's always bad when people are involved in the workplace. The problem is you just can't ban it or people go underground. It's like when people, especially like jobs like prosecutors, journalists, you're working closely together. It's really intense. You're up late at night. Like this is the kind of situation where this happens. And the fact that they were dating before she gets her big promotion, you can't penalize him for that.
And I thought what was so interesting, which, you know, was that Melissa Price Smith said that she called HR immediately to make sure that it was okay, that they weren't violating anything. This has been going on for a while. They're obviously grown-ups. They are both, no, I'm sorry.
Grown-ups?
They're both,
I guess they're the only two in county government then.
Well, sometimes you kind of wonder, but I thought they're both qualified. What I did think was funny, just in a sense of my own aging process, I looked at the photograph without my readers on and I thought, oh, they're holding hands. There was like a picture of them sitting right next to each other. I guess you had to be there, but it was kind of funny. They were not actually holding hands, but I think they're grown-ups. They're both veterans of the prosecutor's office, Charlie, and everything is going to be fine.
And the relationship was underway beforehand.
A year, or more.
I'm just wait a minute. I got a little problem with it now. Okay. Not that what you gave, not that there's anything wrong with it. No, not that there's, I guess by definition, but you know, these are the highest, you know, of the highest ranking law enforcement officials in the county. I think that, you know, this was missing somewhere when she was, you know, barking out all these orders and I'm not a politician, but I'm going to run. And, you know, the whole decision not to charge the council person, I'm not going to be getting involved in politics and all that. Why we have to read this in the newspaper?
It
Why
wasn't,
didn't
the timing was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
I thought.
right.
But this is they're not teenagers. These guys are these are grown people. I think if there is any
Wendy,
uncomfort
all the
or
problems, all the problems in offices always occur when people are grown-ups. It's never kids.
No, I'm not talking
the Me
about-
Too movement never happened.
Right, I know.
But there are a lot of successful office romances.
That's
and
exactly
I'm not
right.
saying this will be one.
Yes, but it's when if they were colleagues, that's one thing. But when one person is the boss, then
But
any
they
nice
were,
gesture-
they were colleagues, and you can't say we're not going to promote you, although you should be promoted, but you're dating.
He was not dating Wesley Bell. He was Wesley Bell's chief of staff.
All right. Let's say not picking on our local school district, but we find out that the superintendent is dating the president of the school board.
Okay, if there had
there are
been
so many other things.
Or what if
wrong
Wesley
with the
Bell had
school board?
relationships with the prosecutors?
Well,
we know that's a problem.
Yeah, but look, that's the bigger problem is when you have a boss who's there sort of like using the employees as a dating pool. That's when things get really complicated. They're like sort of in a series of short-term relationships or even not even relationships. But if somebody is like, they're equals, they're on the same level, one of them gets promoted, you have to find a way to make that work.
No, you have to
Otherwise,
find a
you're
way.
penalizing
You have
them.
to find a way to step down. Not the prosecutor, but the chief of staff says, like, I got to find another job because this looks bad. Okay, this has the appearance of impropriety.
I think couples
and if
work
you're an
together
attorney,
in law enforcement. I think couples work together.
Okay.
In
All right.
in higher education, I think you're going to find couples working together in terms.
Okay, but now
Okay,
no,
Where
let's
it's
move on.
allowed.
Because of time, we really should
Okay.
move on to our topic number 2, Alvin. As you know, it's been a tough time for a number of Latino and Latina workers in the United States. 8,000 have been arrested by ICE since President Donald Trump was inaugurated on January the 20th. And here in St. Louis, about 24 immigrant-owned restaurants, kind of expressing the fears and the concerns of their ownership and employees, decided to shut down this week for a week. It's called A Week Without Immigrants, trying to demonstrate the economic impact that this group has. My opinion is it would have been better to encourage people to flood the restaurants. Like-minded people come in with their dollars and their credit cards in order to support these restaurants. What good is it if you shut down for a week?
Look, so you got to fight back against what's going on in this country right now in any way you see fit. And if they see fit to do it this way, then, hey, maybe other businesses will do it that aren't, like I said, Latino owned, all right? And what about the people that were out in, ICE picked up the people that worked at El Maguey in O'Fallon and then turned them loose a few hours later and said, like, what did they pick you up for? I said, I have still no idea. These people's rights were constitutionally violated. If shutting down the restaurant is the way that you want to make your statement, more power to them. Maybe other restaurants and maybe other immigrants who are working today, I'm just not going to work today. How about that? It'll have an impact.
I think there's just a lot of frustration when they see that most people are just saying, "Oh, I'm so sick of politics right now. I'm just going to check out for a little bit." And these people who feel like they're under the gun say, wait a minute, you're checking out at the wrong time. What about us? So this is their way of showing it. I think Alvin's right.
It's hard to imagine a life lived in the shadows, especially these families. And it's agonizing to imagine how terrified they must be just to go get milk and eggs or, whatever. But just so I understand that, and I'm with you, Alvin. Do whatever you can do, but just from a practical standpoint, today, as you said, Charlie, with people, our attention spans are a quarter of what they used to be. You don't want to hurt the business. I think if they do it again, I would hope that they would ask for, maybe the reverse. Where, please come in and show your support.
I'll tell you, Saturday night, Beth and I and a friend, Jeff, went to El Maguey on Highway K in O'Fallon. And it was fantastic. And we talked to our server, whose father was among the 3 detained. And they said, they need some money for lawyers right now. And because they're going to go back, they have a court date in December. So I think, and I'm not virtue signaling, but I'm suggesting, hey, everybody, take your dollars to El Maguey. We had 3 entrees, drinks, and dessert, $77 before the tip. That was incredible.
No, you make a great point, and I think these two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. We can follow the week without immigrants where these businesses have shut down by really supporting these businesses. You know, my favorite taco shop in Maplewood, where my office is, they have shut down for this week, and it has got my attention. It's helped me to not take them for granted, to be like, okay, how much would I miss this place if it went away? And I think it's not just restaurants shutting down for this, it's people who provide professional services, people who do landscaping. And they're saying, okay, you say you don't want undocumented immigrants in this country. Well, guess what? That's going to affect you too. I think it's a sobering thought.
Hey, I want to talk to you about your latest podcast, and that's with former Governor Jay Nixon.
Yes.
And he had a lot of things to say, including where to hike in Missouri. I can't wait to hear that because I'm very interested. Yeah. But he also said that we should have some sort of blue ribbon panel that takes a look at kids and crime, because that's a real problem, Sarah.
Yeah, I think he had a great idea here. You know, we're talking about what could the state do to actually help address crime in St. Louis and Kansas City. He said, you know, I was governor when it switched from being the state controlling the police department to being the mayor controlling the police department. He goes, I don't see that moving the needle. Just who's in charge of appointing this board, or, you know, who this person answers to, that doesn't make a big difference. What could make a big difference is getting to the root cause of crime and getting to these kids before they turn into hardened criminals. So the state already runs the court system. Missouri used to have a juvenile court system that I think was really respected. I don't think that is the case right now. Taylor Harris wrote a piece for the Riverfront Times before it closed, where she dug into some of the problems there. You have kids who are sort of locked up. You know, they're not getting any sunshine. They're not allowed to go outside. That's a place where you can take a kid who has some problems and they come out of that hardened as opposed to rehabilitated. Something the state could look at.
Well, you know, it'll take money. It's a great idea. But as to Governor Nixon's point about state control, local control, wouldn't move the needle, I don't think anybody's claiming that will. I mean, nobody's saying if we only had state control, crime will go down.
I think they're saying that.
I think that what they're saying is the police would rather work under a panel of businessmen than the city politicians.
Absolutely not.
Well,
in Jefferson City, all they talk about is crime is out of control, and that's why
this will address it.
This will address it.
Well, okay, I don't think most sober-minded people think
But the
that
Black
would
Police
move the
Officers
needle.
Association, the ethical, they have said that they're thinking that the training would be better, that the procedures would be followed, and that's what they're excited about.
The training of the jobs that they won't have no more 10 years from now.
Well,
I think the argument being made is that would solve crime in St. Louis, whether or not sober-minded people actually believe it or they're just saying it to take control.
We had state control for forever, and crime was bad then.
Right.
I mean, so the idea that this is the panacea, that's not a good argument to make.
I read the article in the newsletter, and I was, you know, it sort of pinged with me that he agreed with most of us about the homicide rates and the numbers. You know, he was not getting excited about the numbers. He said, you just can't get excited about 10 fewer homicides. Obviously, that's great that 10 fewer people were killed, but still. But we do the same thing with the supply chain, right? When we see a chink, when there's a problem, then we address that problem. So I thought it was very exciting.
Here's the thing, though, about Governor Nixon, who I really respect, and I'd like to see him get a little more involved, maybe with a commission like this. But, you know, we do have a lot of studies and commissions on things like crime and downtown. Remember, there was a famous Downtown Now plan, largely ignored.
But those things expire. I mean, I really do think they're...
But there's been studies on kids and crime and firearms. Johns Hopkins did one about 2010 on firearms in Missouri. You know, I'm not sure these things are ever read. How about the Ferguson Commission report? Was that ever read? Did anyone follow up on it?
Well, they did for a while, and then it kind of slowed down.
I'm not sure they ever started following that.
You know, but what Jay Nixon is suggesting has been been suggested since the 50s. If you could get to kids early and steer them away from crime, there wouldn't be as much crime. Okay, that's not, earth-shaking announcement. Now, how this panel's going to do it, who, money, all of that, those are the questions to be answered. So we could skip the discussing Will it help? Yeah, it would help.
But
You
to
could
treat-
possibly
but to
do it.
treat-
I didn't know
Yeah.
until Sarah mentioned it that these incarcerated kids don't have sunshine or fresh air.
Exactly, and you've
Yeah.
been screaming about that at the Justice Center.
Yeah,
Right,
you know,
and
so
nobody's talking about whether the juvenile courts are doing as best that they can do. I think by him bringing this up, he's raising an issue that we're not talking about. Instead, everybody's fighting about who controls this or that. He's
And
saying,
it's-
here's this big thing right here.
turning it almost into like a graduate school for criminals, you know, where juvenile, you're going, and then the next step is you're a hardened criminal.
Wendy, I want to ask you about the St. Louis Public Schools, which you got blasted, I think rightfully so, for crazy spending last year, you know, meals out at 801 Fish or 801 Chop House in Clayton. Well, the Post-Dispatch took another look at the credit card receipts, and things are a little bit better because the credit card totals were about $110,000, $111,000 a month. Now it's down to $62,000. But some of the spending still raises a red flag, in my view anyway. Lots of trips to Seattle, Nashville, St. Petersburg, and in, I think it was Nashville, the schools bought NBA tickets. Using your wildest imagination, are there any circumstances under which a school district that's having some financial difficulty should be buying NBA tickets?
Absolutely not. It was Charlotte. And I'm pretty sure it was Charlotte, North Carolina, where they had the NBA tickets. What caught all of our attention is the fact that they were $200. $200, I think you're outside on the parking lot, maybe watching on a jumbotron.
Not a
in the
piece, the
NBA.
entire, for however many tickets we bought. Were
Right. There were. I think there were 11 or 12 people on the trip, and it was a $12,000 trip. It was one of the STEM programs, and so the NBA tickets they just surprised me because they seemed so reasonable. But
But we're looking at the spending of the
But
school.
what I'm trying to figure out is when people are going to start going to jail. I mean, when I think of the stories that we were reading about the children on the buses who didn't have transportation, who were stuffed in Ubers, responsible for carrying not only their little backpacks or their little school bags, but their little seats as well. You read these stories about the credit card abuse, and then you think about those kids. I want people in jail.
Mm-hmm.
I want heads to roll.
Yeah, I think one of the horrors of what has gone on, and I'm kind of with you, like, you know, who's going to pay for this? And I don't mean financially, I mean,
Right.
But one of the horrors is that when something like this says, like, oh, NBA tickets, oh, they're just wasting their money, say they won't ever change, and all right. If you don't have all this scandalous spending, you took some kids to a conference, STEM conference in Charlotte, and you said, like, hey, one of the perks is, like I said, we've got some nosebleed seats or standing room only. Hey, we're all going to go to an NBA basketball game while we're here, all right? And it was not the expenditure of the $12,000 and the trip. Judge on that separate than the fact that they gave an opportunity to some kids that probably wouldn't have. They definitely wouldn't have had it in St. Louis because we don't have a team. So I mean, see, that's why I said, like, I can't be mad at them for doing this, but it looks so bad in the light of
But
what
the
everything
rest
else
of
is.
the itemized, I mean, it's just this has got to stop. I mean, $67,000 to me.
But I
You've
think
got the microscope.
this particular $12,000 for this
Yeah.
trip to Charlotte, I think is 100% justifiable. If we can get St. Louis public school kids to see a little more of the world, to open up their eyes, to let them watch an NBA game, and yeah, I don't want taxpayer dollars going for a luxury box, but it's like $200 total, and some kids got to see how cool the world can be if you just work hard and take advantage of opportunities. That to me is a great use of that money.
Yeah, this isn't the superintendent and the board president going to the chop house. And,
Right, going to a spa.
eating steak and drinking red wine. This is something they're doing with kids.
You said the superintendent, I thought you were going to say, this isn't the Super Bowl. I said, yeah, I'd have a problem with that.
Same.
I think Wendy's right, though. If you don't have a lot of money and you're $36 million in the red, I can't justify the entire field.
Well, all right, but now you're saying we cannot spend a dime on a kid outside of a classroom in St.
Kind
Louis,
of.
and Sarah's right. You still got to present opportunities to kids to let them see them.
And Charlie,
When you were Kirkwood High, you weren't flown to Orlando or Charlotte. I know I wasn't.
Look, they are $36 million in the red for this particular year. They actually have a large surplus of money. That's sort of one of these things that has also got lost in this. They're sitting on a decent amount of money. And I will say, when I was like this poor kid growing up in Cleveland, I remember in college, my college flew me to Washington, D.C., and I got to go to a fancy hotel for the first time in my life and meet this alumni who was powerful. That changed my life.
Yeah,
it really did.
I was going to say, I got to go to Washington, D.C. one time. I think I went to Kansas City.
Paid for by the school district?
I don't know who paid for it, but we went as a class. So yes.
I think what we're learning is they were better. This half of the table, they were better students than us. This half of the table.
These kids who went to that STEM class,
Yeah.
they were outstanding students. This was a reward for them.
Right. I mean, in terms of if I'm being Betty Buzzkill, which apparently is my role, I would want something cost-effective where maybe you could expose more kids to something, I don't know, say in Chicago or Memphis or someplace maybe a little bit closer that doesn't cost as much to get to. But, like, there were 2 kids. I believe there were only 2 students.
I thought it was
On
more
this
than
trip?
that. I thought it was 6.
Was it 6? Well,
Hey,
okay, still.
Call me crazy,
12,000.
but I'm with Betty because I think you can learn STEM in a classroom. I don't think you need to travel for it.
Okay.
But-
all right.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I am. I'm
not. It's
a
like
tightwad.
Sarah's
I admit
right.
it.
You got to create opportunities, especially, and I'm going to just be flat out. You really need to create opportunities for black kids to get away from here and see that there is a world that you can strive to be a part of.
I don't even know the color of the kids according to the report.
No, I'm just saying that no, it's important for black kids, and these are probably black kids if they're coming to St. Louis Public School. Let's be honest. It's
I
important.
don't know.
It's
I don't-
important. Come on, Charlie. All right.
well,
They
it
took
was-
6 white kids from SLPS.
I have no idea.
on,
With this
man.
school district,
All right.
one never knows. Okay. I want to ask you, Alvin, about the state of Illinois, which has decided to, it's actually mulling the banning of red dye number 3, which is actually just banned by the FDA this week, and 3 other chemicals that are frequently found in food. You know, there's a big movement against ultra-processed food where you see the ingredients and you know that they're not in your kitchen because they're not available outside of a chemist's lab. And so a lot of people, including the new Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., wants to get rid of a lot of these chemicals, these additives. But should a state be eliminating them, like red dye number 3, which is or was in a lot of cough syrups and candies?
I mean, I just don't know how you do it. It's maybe, the thought that counts, but how do you do it? I mean, like, okay, this fast food place serves, drinks and they have red dye in them. So they have to now change the ones that are in the state of Illinois. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yes, we should watch what we eat. Ultra-processed food is bad for us, but I mean, that's got to start coming down to the individual on that.
Chicago hot dogs are world famous, and I'm, I ate at Woofie's today. I had lunch there, which is Chicago hot dogs here in Overland, and I'm guessing there might be red dye in Chicago hot dogs. And the idea that the Illinois government would say to Chicago, you can't eat those hot dogs, that just sounds wrong.
It's an upside-down world.
Overreach.
I feel like I'm the last defender of the federal government, and there's, a lot of things I wouldn't defend, but I like only the federal government to decide that it's going to ban food coloring. We can't have 50 different standards for
That's
this.
right.
And I know when I lived in California, California was always taking the lead on putting down all these new regulations, and because they were such a big place to do business, corporations would just follow their lead and they'd be like, okay, California says when you flush the toilet, it won't get everything down. Well, we're going to make that the standard across the U.S. because we got to follow what California does. I don't know if Illinois has that power. It'll be interesting to see, but I don't like it.
I think it's a good idea for health reasons, and that's paramount. It might be difficult to implement if Iowa has one regulation, Illinois another. It depends on what California does. If California decides to ban these additives, and I think it might have already, I think pretty soon every manufacturer will follow. But there's actually good news, and that is that there's a company in St. Louis named Sensient, Sensient, and they make additives. And they can take beets and take the red coloring out of beets and put them in the food that you're looking for. And so I'm thinking there's so many people out there these days, not just Kennedy, but who want to get better wheat out of the kind that's used in Europe and get some of the colorings out and kind of adopt some of the food standards that seemingly make other countries a little bit healthier.
Yeah,
I mean, you
well-
got to look around. We're not that healthy.
This is one of those, like, Charlie, I didn't know what gluten was until I ate something non-gluten, and I said, like, oh, this doesn't have gluten in it.
Yeah.
So I think I'll be able to taste that beet red instead of that
Probably.
red dye number
Didn't we
6.
have-
Used to it.
Didn't we have the red dye conversation in the 80s?
But I think
Yes.
that red dye was killing you.
Those were the M&Ms.
Yeah.
No.
Slowly.
Wendy's right.
Right.
The red dye was eliminated in cosmetics in 1990.
I thought it was also
No, it's back in the 60s.
It was also candy.
Just cosmetics.
Oh, all right.
But it didn't eliminate it in the foods we ingest.
Well, they changed the laws and the rules all the time. I mean,
Oh my gosh, so true.
Butter was bad for you, and then butter's a lot better than
Great.
margarine.
Eggs are good. Eggs are
red
bad.
wine is a superfood, and now, you can't drink anything. So I don't know. I'm not as enthused as you are about the government.
I would be so excited about a fine bottle of eggs, right? I mean, who can buy eggs anymore? I mean, seriously, it's like champagne.
well, to your husband, Chris, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. We know what to get you,
A
Wendy.
bottle of eggs.
I have an egg guy.
You do?
Oh, yeah, I bet you do. All right. Hey, let's go to the old mailbag and see what people had to say about last week's outstanding program. There we are. Charlie asked, is it pejorative to call it a Missouri wine? Yes, quit your whining. Ha ha, from Frank Medica of Maryville, Illinois. We also heard from Kevin Mahoney of Swansea, who wrote, nowhere else could you listen to bluegrass, all country, classic country, Motown, Stax R&B, jazz, shoegaze, EDM, samba, punk, ska, folk, reggae, Delta blues, and Bulgarian folk music. What a loss for St. Louis and the worldwide KDHX community. Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. Bruce B. Bradley of St. Louis Hills wrote, as a native of Omaha, Nebraska, who has lived here for over 30 years, I really resented Alvin Reid's negative comment last week about my hometown. Thanks, Bruce.
I'm sorry.
And we heard from Jim Lawrence of St. Louis, who wrote, I dispute Bill's characterization of Hal Goldsmith as humorless and grim. His reticence in dealing with a reporter is understandable, given his profession. With the rest of us, however, Hal is outgoing, friendly, witty, and always great company. Hey, you can write us care of 9 PBS. Use zip code 63108. We love those emails and social media as well. And don't forget to check us out on your favorite podcast source and call the 9 line at 314-512-9094. And yeah, you can follow us wherever you are through your favorite podcast. And don't forget, we have Last Call on the 9 PBS YouTube channel. This week we'll talk about pickleball and Kirkwood and more. And Monday night, speaking of program notes, Sarah Fenske hosts Race for Mayor, the St. Louis Citizens Agenda. This is a chance for the rest of us to learn more about the 4 candidates in the mayoral primary.
That's right. We asked people, focus groups, citizens, what are the issues that are most important to them. We came up with a list of 5, and then we asked the mayoral candidates to drill down on those. So should be good.
Excellent. Thank you. And look forward to that. That's Monday at 7 right here on 9 PBS. Happy Valentine's Day. And tomorrow, happy birthday to the city of St. Louis. We'll see you next week.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.